I'm Rainbow Sparkle and I'm reading The Enchanted Wood by Enid Blyton. This is chapter 13, Moonface Gets Into Trouble. The children didn't really feel that they wanted to go to the lands of the faraway tree for a while. It was a bit too exciting to climb through the clouds to see what was above them. But they did want to see their friends in the tree, especially dear old Moonface. He'd been such a big help to them. So the very next time they had a day to themselves, they set off through the Enchanted Wood to the faraway tree. There was no rope to guide them this time. It was only at night that the rope was strung through the boughs to help the wood folk up and down. The children began to climb up. Every door and window in the tree seemed shut today, and not a soul was about. It was quite dull climbing up the tree. Even when they reached Silkie's house, that was shut too, and they couldn't hear Silkie singing or anything. They knocked, but there was no answer. So on they went up to Moonface's, keeping a good lookout for Mother Washlot's dirty washing to come swooshing down at them. But not even her water appeared that day. It all seemed very quiet and peaceful. They reached Moonface's house at the top of the tree, and they rapped on the door. Nobody opened. But inside they could quite well hear somebody crying. It was very mysterious. "It doesn't sound like Moonface," said Fanny, puzzled. "Let's go in and see who it is." So they opened the door and went in, and it was Silkie, sitting in the corner, crying bitterly. "Whatever's the matter?" said Joe. "And where's old Moonface?" said Fanny. "Oh dear," sobbed Silkie. "Moonface has been thrown up into some dreadful strange land at the top of the faraway tree because he was rude to Mr. What's-his-name." "What? That old man who's always sitting in a chair and snoring?" said Bessie, remembering that they hadn't seen him that day. "Whatever did Moonface do?" "Oh, it was very naughty," wept Silkie. So was I. You see, we heard Mr. What's-his-name snoring as usual, and we crept up to him and saw that his mouth was wide open. And oh dear, we popped a handful of acorns into it. And when he woke up, he spluttered. And they popped in his mouth, and then he caught sight of us hiding behind a branch. Goodness, did you really dare to do such a naughty thing?" cried Bessie. "No wonder he was angry." "Moonface is dreadfully bad sometimes," said Silkie, wiping her eyes. "He makes me naughty too. Well, we ran away up the tree to Moonface's house, and I got in safely, but Moonface didn't. And Mr. What's-his-name caught hold of him and threw him right through the hole in the clouds into the land, and that's where he is today." "Good gracious! Well, can't we get him back?" said Fanny in alarm. "He can climb back down the ladder, surely back to the tree." "Well, yes, he could," said Silkie, "but you see, Mr. What's-his-name is sitting on the ladder ready to catch him and spank him and throw him back. So what's the use of that?" "What land is up there today?" asked Joe. "The land of old saucepanman," said Silkie. "He lives there in his cottage with his pots and his pans, and he's quite harmless. But you see, Mr. What's-his-name will sit on the ladder till the land swings round and another one comes, and then Moonface won't be able to get back, and then he's going to be lost forever." "Oh dear," said Joe, as they stared at Silkie in despair, for they were very fond of old Moonface now. "Isn't there anything we can do?" asked Joe. "Well, there's just one hope," said Silkie. fluffing out her golden hair. "The old saucepanman is a friend of Mr. What's-his-name, and if he knew that the land was at the top of the faraway tree, he might come along and have a cup of tea with Mr. What's-his-name. If he knew the land was here, and then Moonface could slip down the ladder back here." "Oh," said the children, and they looked at one another. They could quite well see that this was meant to be that all of them had to go up the ladder again and get into this strange land. "I'll go," said Bessie. "After all, Moonface helped us last time. We must help him now." "Will all three of us go?" said Joe. So they set up off to the top of the branch, onto the little ladder. There they found Mr. What's-his-name sitting reading his newspaper and smoking an enormous pipe that sent clouds of smoke up into the hole in the clouds. "Please, can we pass?" said Bessie timidly. "No, you can't," said Mr. What's-his-name rudely. "Well, we've got to," said Joe. "So if we tread on you, on your feet, you must excuse us." Mr. What's-his-name just simply wouldn't move. He really was a very cross old man. He slapped each of the children as they squeezed past him. And they were very glad that they had climbed through the hole and were in the land above. "So this is the land of Saucepanman," said Fanny, when they were standing on the grass. "What a funny little land!" It was an island floating in what seemed to be a sea of white. It really wasn't much bigger than a large field. Bessie went to the edge and looked over. "Gracious," she said in alarm. "It's like a cliff and the sea is a big white cloud. Don't go too near the edge, anybody. It won't be nice to fall off." "Hi, hi!" suddenly yelled an excited voice. They turned round and saw Moonface waving at them and running hard towards them. "Hi, how did you get here?" "Hello, we came up to see what we could do for you," said Joe. "We heard what happened. Old What's-his-name is sitting on the ladder still waiting for you. But Silkie says this is the land of the saucepanman, who is a great friend of Mr. What's-his-name. So we've come to see if we could ask him if he'll go down and have tea with his friend. Then you can slip down safely and go home." "Oh God," said Moonface. "I didn't know what land this was, and goodness me, I was quite afraid of falling off it. It's so small. Where do you suppose old Saucepanman lives?" "Well, I can't imagine," said Joe, looking round. All he could see was a very large stretch of grass with no house and nobody in sight at all. Where in the world would Saucepanman live? "Well, we'll have to go carefully all around this funny little land," said Bessie. "His house must be somewhere, but we'd better hurry, for you never know when the land will swing away from the faraway tree, and we don't want to live in this strange little place forever." They began to walk around the land. Presently they came to a cliff that was not quite so steep as the others. They peered over it. Joe pointed to some things stuck in the cliff. "Whatever are those?" he said. "They look like some sort of steps down the cliffside." "They're saucepans," they said suddenly. "Yes, saucepans with their handles stuck firmly into the cliff, and the pan sort of leans on it. Oh, how strange." "Well, this must be the way down to the saucepanman's house," said Joe. "Come on, be careful, girls, or you may fall and roll over off the edge of the land." So they carefully began to climb down the cliff, treading off the saucepans stuck into the earth. It was really rather funny. They got down at last, and then they heard a very curious noise indeed. It was a sort of crashing and banging and clattering and clanging, and the children were quite alarmed. "The noise is coming from around the corner," said Joe. So they crept cautiously to the corner and peeped around. They could see a crooked little house with saucepans for a chimney. The noise came from inside the house. The children crept to the window and looked through. And inside they saw the strangest little man that they'd ever seen, dancing the strangest dance. He had saucepans and kettles hung all over him. He wore a saucepan for a hat, and he crashed 2 saucepans together as he danced. "Do you think he's dangerous?" Joe whispered.